My Licorice is Alive with Willow, Weep for Me, written way back in 1932 by Ronnell. Rare for her time, Ronnell was one of only a handful of lady songwriters, and she was a nice Jewish girl from Omaha, Nebraska, who went to Radcliffe and then to Hollywood, where she famously co-wrote the first musical hit for Disney. And what was that? Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf? Yep, that was by Ronnell. And she also scored The Story of G.I. Joe, which was one of the best films ever made about World War II. Anyway, Willow Weep for Me was a hit for the ages and recorded across the decades by Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday, Stan Getz, Thelonious Monk, and others, to name a few. Welcome, folks, to another installment of Rebel Without Applause, coming to you, as always, from the Theosophic enclave known as Crotona. By that I mean my nutshell of infinite space, otherwise known as my television studio apartment, located in the wood of my holly under the sign that overlooks the post-apocalyptic, COVID-addled, protest-scarred, yet still somehow enchanted land of law. And the days march on. The wheel that is our news cycle keeps spinning faster and faster, and like hamsters on that wheel, we try and keep pace. Faster and faster we run until, panting with exhaustion, we are tossed off the wheel. We have to keep some space in our brains reserved for love and beauty, art and sexuality, music, movies, and literature. Can't let every brain cell be taken over by that monster of malevolence. You know I'm talking about the PVP, Putin's vice president. You know, the super spreader in chief, the billionaire brat boy. We got to block that doofus from our brain, or at least carve out a little space for a thing called hope. And with that in mind, it's a good time to start watching 1930s era musicals. My recommendation, first and foremost, start with 42nd Street. Great songs, great stories. And it does something that few musicals ever do. It takes you back to a real time and a real place, specifically the Great White Way, meaning Broadway, in the grips of the Great Depression. After that musical, check out a really good cowboy movie. The other night, I caught up to My Darling Clementine on Turner Classics, which stars Henry Fonda and Walter Brennan, Victor Mature, and Ward Bond. It's not the most renowned of the John Ford movies, but it has as much poetry packed into it than T.S. Eliot's J. Alfred Prufrock. My Darling Clementine retells one of the oldest of the Western myths, Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday facing down a family of murderous, cattle-rustling miscreants at the OK Corral. Like so much of American mythology, the climax comes with a spasm of violence and gunfire, after which, as is our custom, justice prevails. Until, of course, the next post-traumatically stressed Civil War psychopath rides into town, steals cattle, kills a few God-fearing farmers, and then another shootout ensues. For another example, I might refer you to George Stevens' Shane. Why is it that so many of our so-called victories are won with the barrel of a gun? That's a conundrum for another podcast, but in the meantime, I might refer you to Howard Zinn's monumental The People's History of the United States, which offers up compelling evidence of another narrative that runs through the American story. The People's History is probably the greatest book of American history written in the last 50 years or so. Got a moment? And a lot of you do? Check it out. It's an eye-opener. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yes, of course, John Ford's My Darling Clementine. Fonda is fantastic. He's another underrated cinema actor. There's not a false moment in the whole movie. His inner life is so rich, so unspoken. There's poetry there, too, but it's the silent poetry of thought that only the best among our actors can capture. Ford and Fonda have that down. Another Ford-Fonda collaboration that deserves revisiting is The Grapes of Wrath. Easily amongst the greatest movies ever made. You want to feel the Depression? Want to feel the ravages of unregulated plantation capitalism? Want to see what it's like to be white and not so privileged? Check out Ford and Fonda's Grapes of Wrath, with a major tip of my weather-beaten fedora to John Steinbeck, who wrote the book. Speaking of plantation capitalism, had a taste of it Friday night. Last week, I was happily surprised to find out that after self-taping an audition, that I had the rare good fortune of booking a national commercial for none other than Bank of America. Yeah, Bank of America. And from what I could gather, the spot was going to be a thoughtful homage to the reopening of the baseball season, and I was selected to be the umpire. Well, with the new COVID-19 protocols, my wardrobe, by that I mean my umpire uniform with shin guards, mask, and chest protector, were delivered by a production assistant to this, my very own television studio apartment. I was a little taken aback when he walked right into my apartment, but at least he had a mask on. Oh well. I tried the ensemble on, and I emailed the images back to the wardrobe person for approval, which I got. Then I signed all manner of documents under penalty of perjury that, to the best of my knowledge, I was COVID-free, that I had not been in touch with any COVID-positive folk within the last weeks or so. And on Friday afternoon, I drove the 2 hours out into the Mojave Desert to a sun-bleached, vacated minor league baseball stadium out there on the edge of nowhere. The temperature upon arrival was a balmy 105 degrees. Surely I hoped it was hot enough to kill any COVID-19 BBs looking for fresh housing in the virgin tissues of my lungs, or so I hoped. Per the instructions sent to me, I arrived to the stadium parking lot in full umpire regalia, ready to work, ready to offer up my little bit of reality to the imaginary undertaking at hand. Sure, it wasn't a movie or a TV show, but whatever, this was my first and best chance in ages to get a commercial on the air and get some real residuals coming in. Maybe if I'm lucky, the spot will get enough play and I'll be able to earn my way back onto that SAG health plan. Gee whiz, gee, wouldn't that be nice? To bring my Obamacare premium down by 2/3. Yeah, that would be nice. All right, don't get ahead of yourself, Bill. Don't start counting those chickens before they cross the road or before they're hatched or before those ducks are lying. I know there's an expression in there somewhere. Just, Bill, calm down. So, from the freeway, driving across the desert, I could see the stadium. It was the baseball home to the Lancaster Jethawks, the single-A affiliate to the Major League Colorado Rockies. As I pulled into the parking lot, a medic in mask and face shield hustled up to my car window and took my temperature with that air thermometer. It was 97 something. I was okay. So she waved me on in. So far, so good. Then I clambered out of my car, slipped into my chest protector and shin guards, affixed my trusty N95 over my mouth and nose, and over that mask, I slipped on the wire cage umpire mask. Let's play ball, I thought to myself. Let's get those residual dollars flowing into my mailbox again. Let's pay my rent. Let's qualify for SAG health insurance. Let's contribute to my paltry little SAG pension. Let's do this. Then I lumbered over to the stadium entrance where another medic in another mask and face shield took my temperature again with, thank God, a satisfying result. Once inside the supposedly COVID-safe perimeter of the set, a second AD signed me in and directed me to wait in the seats behind home plate. Really good seats, I might add, if you're at Dodger Stadium. Not so good if you are sitting in 100-plus degree heat in full umpire gear in the middle of the Mojave Desert. Oh well, that's showbiz. Which reminded me of an old joke. A guy walks into a sweltering circus tent. In the middle of an earthen circle, he spots an 80-year-old lady, crooked and haggard in her demeanor, with a large shovel in hand. With her greasy hair drooping sadly from beneath her worker's cap, the lady's stagehand was scraping a huge, steaming mound of elephant shit into a wheelbarrow. And the guy watches in a kind of stupefied horror. Finally, he approaches the old circus lady worker and says, "Gee whiz, gee lady, how can you do that?" And with that, the old lady straightens herself out, and with her eyes full of pride, she stares daggers back at the guy and says, "Are you kidding? I'm in show business." Well, sitting there in the stands waiting for my moment of creative glory, I could kind of feel how the old lady felt, though nobody asked me to shovel elephant shit. But yeah, I'm in show business, and right now there is no business in show business, so I am grateful for the little business I can gather. So, feeling kind of good about myself, I sat there and sipped off my water bottle and waited for the production to get to me. The hours clipped by. The desert sun slipped behind the mountains. The sky went from a harsh blue to a brilliant orange to coffee black, all-consuming night. And then the stadium lights blinked on. The whole field was laid out before me in a kind of perfect green and earth-brown symmetry, truly a field of dreams. And then the crew broke for lunch. Lunch in the biz can mean any time, usually halfway through the workday, which could be high noon or high midnight or high morning, whenever. And following the social distance protocols, I plopped myself on a patch of grass, lifted my wire mask, then my cloth mask, and I ate. Afterwards, the second AD escorted us onto the field, and by us, I mean myself and a collection of baseball players. Young guys who were scuffling minor leaguers decked out in Dodger blue and Yankee pinstripes in the giant uniform of San Francisco. But as far as Bank of America and Leo Burnett Advertising Agency and some such production company, for this night at least, these young ball players were in the show. By that I mean they were bona fide big leaguers. And just as they were bona fide big league ball players, yours truly, by that I mean me, was a bona fide major league umpire, which felt kind of cool. So I plunked myself down in the dugout and I sat and waited and watched as the director, a shaggy-haired dude in a ball-cap T-shirt and designer N95, lollygagged his way through a series of mini vignettes with the players. Usually they were thoughtful little interludes before they swung a bat or threw a pitch or stretched out a hamstring, just private contemplative moments before they threw themselves into the ritualized athletic endeavor that is baseball. That would be the stuff of this commercial, I thought. America's pastime quietly girding itself for the virus-addled new normal, whatever that might be. Anyway, the hours rolled by and still nobody called me. Nobody even said hello or even looked at me. Not the director, not the producers, not anybody from the agency or a representative from the client. By that I mean big, bad, fucking Bank of America. You know, folks, I have been on many sets, movies, TV shows, and commercials over my 30 years of obscurity in show business, and never was I not greeted by the director upon arrival. Usually they thank you for coming, for making the long drive, for the great audition, something, some recognition that you are there, that you exist, that you, excuse the expression, that you matter. But these folks, the director, the producer, the agency minions, the client, no, they didn't. I might as well have been a fence post or a rosin bag or some nameless human widget on their assembly line. So I just sat there and waited for my moment in the dugout. Waiting for my moment in a baseball dugout. This was something I had experienced before. Like a slow burning tingle, I could feel the old fury, the old humiliation rising in my gut. It felt like I was back at Taft High School in the Valley, back in the mid-'70s. I could see myself sitting in the dugout adjusting my uniform, retying my cleats, pounding my glove, waiting and waiting and waiting for that racist, anti-Semitic coach to put me into the game. His name was Ray O'Connor, Coach O'Connor. I will never forget that prick. For years after high school, I harbored fantasies of tearing his guts out, ripping him apart limb by limb. He'd inhabit my dreams with wild fantasies of revenge. I have one memory that dominates all others. I remember when we were all sitting on the outfield grass before a game, and one of the inner city teams bust into the lily-white valley was arriving for the game. And as the bus pulled up to the field, Coach O'Connor stared out at the row of black faces staring out of the bus. Then he smiled and cracked to the all-white Taft baseball team, and I will never forget this. He looked back at that bus and he said, "Check out the load of coal, boys. Check out the load of coal." I'll never forget that as long as I live. Then, as was our custom, we got off of our butts and we took infield practice, and then the game began, and I took my familiar position, not on the field. No, my familiar position was on the edge of the bench. Pitch after pitch, inning after inning, game after game, it was always the same. I'd sit there in the dugout waiting and praying for my moment, only my moment never came. I just sat there and my teenage self silently suffered. And here I am, decades later, at the edge of the bench, waiting to get into the game. Holy shit, this was deja vu all over again. Who'd have thunk it? And still, as a breath of cool midnight air wafted across the stadium, I waited. And finally, as the clock at the top of the grandstand slid past 1 a.m., the second AD came up and said, well, that was a wrap. Turn in your wardrobe, boys. Sign out and see you later. What? Huh? Wait. Excuse me, what about my scene? Oh, well, they don't want to go into overtime, he said. It's all about the Benjamins, bro. About the Benjamins. You mean money. Oh. You mean with a killer virus on the loose, I stepped out of my safe-at-home cocoon, drove all the way out here. You mean I risked my life to be on a set for this? Holy shit, I was boiling. I wanted to scream at the holy heavens and shout, "Fuck you all!" I wanted to grab a bat and trash this fucking place. I'd look for the director in his designer t-shirt and N95, not to be seen. The producers, whoever they were gone. The agency person, 86. The B of A folks out of there if they ever were there. You incompetent, arrogant, pissant sons of bitches, you fucking gutless dipshit assholes. I had to rip your fucking hearts out of your chest, eat it, and shit the waste right on your frigging face. But I didn't. I swallowed that bile and trudged out of there, just like I did in high school. I went to wardrobe, dumped my gear in a heap, signed out, and drove through the hot-as-hell desert night back to my little island of solace right here in the wood of my holly where I am sitting right now. Talk about a big Hollywood fuck you. Talk about plantation capitalism. Talk about the grapes of my wrath. Gee whiz, gee. I think I'm going to move my checking and savings accounts out of Bank America. Maybe I'll move it to Wells Fargo. That'll show those bastards. Black lives matter. For sure they do. But you know what? So do actors' lives. They matter too, mine included. Talk about disrespect. Well, at least I have my health. At least I think I do, or at least I feel like I do for now. So, yesterday I drove out to a deserted stretch of beach out near Paradise Cove in Malibu, and with the surf as flat as a skating rink, I paddled out on my stand-up board straight out to sea. 1 mile, then 2, then another. I plied my way beyond the rich folks out at Little Doom and leashed myself to a large strand of kelp and just lay there and let the sun and the breeze waft over me. A family of sea lions poked their heads above the green kelpy carpet to check me out. When I smiled back, they disappeared below. And then with the breeze stiffening and whitecaps showing out of the west, I untethered myself, popped to my feet, and with my carbon fiber scepter in hand, downwinded back to the small stretch of beach from which I embarked. I'll get through this, somehow, some way. Till next time, folks, namaste, shalom, and aloha. Namashaloha.